So, you want to make MAKA'S scythe from Soul Eater nearly 2 decades after the release of the anime. Well, you've come to the right place, because actually, I didn't really want to make this scythe either. But before you click off, let me take you all to where it all began. It all started in the December of 2025 when I was busy moderating my Discord when I suddenly got a message. Who in the world is this?
Антигар похмельник закусал. I'm an engineer. Money!
And with my motivations for money, I mean friendship, now set, let's get to the plan. When looking at MAKA'S scythe from Soul Eater, I broke it down into 3 distinct parts, which is mainly the blade, the sleeve which holds the blade, and that sleeve is then connected to the shaft, and with these 3 parts, the whole scythe is formed. So let's get started with the blade. Now, using my absolutely expert world-class engineering, intuition, and knowledge, I decided that the blade portion would be made out of using microdensity fiberboard, otherwise known as MDF for short, as it provides me the both lightweight properties as well as strength that the blade needs. Alright, and here is the MDF board in question. The one I had was around 3mm, or for those who prefer freedom units, I think that would be 0.1 inches. Should be 0.11. As you can see right here, I measured it out with the ruler, and I think this width is fine, although if you find something a little bit thicker, it wouldn't hurt as well. Now, once you've acquired your MDF board, preferably something that is quite large, because if we were to build MAKA'S scythe to scale, it is actually massive. I put the dimensions of my scythe on screen up here. As you can see, the blade length is around like I think 80 centimeters. In draft, however, after drawing it out on the MDF board, I realized that it was still a little bit too tiny, so I extended it to 120 cm in length, and everything else that is expertly drawn out in MS Paint can be followed if you wish to achieve my exact dimensions. And once you have your dimensions, it's really as simple as grabbing like a pencil or any like permanent marker that can be drawn on an MDF board and start drawing out your dimensions on the MDF board. Preferably have a long ruler, and as for the angles, I basically just eyeballed and like hand draw it. As you can see, here is the sleeve and the shaft of the blade. So, and here's my measuring tape to show you how long it actually is. But I would say scale it to your height. Toto is roughly around, I think, 175 centimeters, so I made it in scale to her. So yeah, definitely experiment a little bit, take your time, and yeah, good luck. Something that definitely helped me was knowing the 3 edges and going from there. For this project, you're going to need a 15mm diameter PVC pipe, another 20mm PVC pipe, some spray paint, shiny black and shiny red, and you're going to need epoxy resin. Very important, I use 3-ton epoxy resin. And we're going to need some wood glue as well that I don't even think we use, but I'm including it anyways, and a backup adhesive, something that acts fast. There's our pencil box, and the most important part of this entire project, the Dremel. And yeah, looking back at this, there's actually a lot more ingredients and parts that go into this that I later buy from the hardware store, but these are the basics. If you want to go like have a list to prepare for everything you're going to need, I recommend watching this video fully first. Now, as for what kind of Dremel you should get, there really isn't anything specific. Just make sure it's powerful enough. Mine is at 260 watts, and as per the attachments, make sure it can handle cutting, sanding, grinding, and maybe even polishing if you really wanted to. And make sure it has saw blades. Very important. The more sizes you have, the better. And I'll link mine exactly down in the description, the one that I got, because it's the only tool that I got online. The rest I bought it from local hardware stores. As you can see, here is my MDF board. It is very massive. In fact, I have no idea why I have something like this in my house. Thanks Dad, I guess. Yeah, but as you can see, the dimensions of the side blade only take up like half the MDF board. So my first order of business is actually drawing a line to cut it in half, because there is no way I'm working on this entire thing and hauling it around. If you guys have an MDF board that is like really large, or even spare MDF boards that you don't use, I would highly recommend doing this step, as it provides a sort of like test cut that you can do to hone your skills a little bit before cutting into the side blade itself. Because once you make a mistake, yeah, that's kind of going to be a big time waster. Don't do that. Don't rush into it. In fact, I was pretty fortunate to have test cuts myself, and this is where I realized I might be a dog shit engineer because I've never used a Dremel in my entire life. And all we gotta do is find an open space, get some eye protection because we definitely don't want PVC chunks flying into our eyes, as well as a mask because microplastics. And of course, before cutting anything using your newly acquired Dremel, if you're not already like a world-class Dremel expert, like I'm not, I'm a noob. Please read your instructions on how to attach attachments to your Dremel. Mine was pretty unconventional. Like I have seen other Dremels in the past, they definitely did not have this tool that is in this particular shape to connect and disconnect the attachments. And oh yeah, it's a good time to mention that you probably should have a toolbox lying around. I don't think it's something you need to buy. Like, ask your dad, he probably has one lying around. Screwdrivers, pliers, wrenches, socket wrenches, you may need them, and a brick. A brick is very important. You'll see why later. Now, for cutting with the Dremel, I can't really say that I have like expert tips on it, but things that did help me a lot was cutting outside the markings. As you can see here, I gave a little bit of a margin, very little, like I think even point point 0.5 millimeters is what you should really aim for, because you will eventually make mistakes. You can't hold the Dremel perfectly still all the time. So yeah, definitely do pay attention to that. And for the curved parts, I would recommend having a POV from the top, like you have your eyes directly above where you're cutting. If you angle the blade even slightly off 90 degrees, you're going to have a little bit of eating into the MDF board, which will mess you up a little bit. Gradualness is key. This Dremel isn't meant to cut very fast. In fact, I think the more slower you go, the smoother cuts it has. So definitely do pay attention to that. It definitely isn't impossible. If a dogshit engineer can me like do it, I'm pretty sure anyone can. And I would recommend doing the straight sides first, and then moving on to the curved sides. Have the MDF board propped up on something that isn't the floor, because you definitely don't want to be cutting the floor. And yeah, happy dremeling, I guess. And once you have your cutout of your side blade, set it down on a cardboard or anything that you can like preferably brace it against, and switch out your saw blade attachment for a sandpaper or grinding attachment, as we want to like sand down the edges. They won't be perfectly smooth unless you're a world-class engineer like me, who actually got it pretty smooth on its first try. But definitely, yeah, sanding is needed no matter what, especially for the next step, which is priming as well as painting. So definitely do get your sanding attachment and just sand that bad boy down. Make sure every piece is smooth. As you can see here, there were some like errors that happened during sawing, and some of the angles are off. So you just want to kind of like flatten them out and try not to go too hard on the MDF, as you can sort of like burn the wood. Yeah, definitely don't do that. Now, once we have our scythe blade inside, as you can see, these were the imperfections I was talking about. You have some nicks, some chips, and even on the top of the scythe blade, as you can see here, there will be scratches. I think this is because sometimes when you're cutting, you will skid across the blade and go onto the MDF, which you will see like nearly every cutting line will have this. And yeah, sanding was I didn't do a great job at sanding. I actually used sandpaper to further smoothen it out, something you also can buy if you wish to do it. This crack was pretty atrocious, as you can see, but not to worry. We have our secret weapon, Bostic Wall Putty. Also something that I found in my house, so I have no idea how I'm going to price this later, but we'll have a cost breakdown. And essentially, using this wall putty, you really wanna get like the correct amount and you really want to like press it in there. As you can see here, my technique is pretty good. You kind of like spread it, not too much, you don't want it to be too heavy, and you want to just press it in there and sand it down later. What sandpaper I used, do I even remember? I think I used somewhere around like 600 400 grit. Nothing too fine, you want it to be quite rough. Actually, you want to take out material fast, and it doesn't really matter how smooth it is because we are going to spray paint on this later. Yeah. Yeah, we sand that down real good. Make sure it's like sanded flush to the MDF board. You don't want any parts sticking out. Mine actually did bump out a little bit. I didn't do too good of a job sanding it. And you bring it out to this open area where you probably have to line the ground unless you want to spray paint the ground. Try not to vandalize anything while you're at it. And you want to sand down the entire MDF board. If you have like a brown, like raw MDF board, I don't think you need to do this. Mine had like a white layer on top of it, so I had to do this because it was pretty smooth. And after that, you generally want to apply your first coat of shiny black. Don't be like me. I'm pretty bad at spray painting. I'm not like a professional street thug. I don't know how to spray paint the way the pros do it. But general advice: do light coats and do multiple coats. Do like 4 or 5 even. I did 3, and even that didn't seem too smooth. Now, once you've let everything come together after applying your multiple coats, it should be able to look like this. It's a glossy metallic black. That is the color that I chose, and make sure that even on the rear and top side of the blade, you can see here, I'm trying to get the camera to focus. Yeah, it should look like this. So definitely give it a while to dry. Definitely don't rush it. And as for the sleeve of the side, you definitely want to sand it down as well before painting. I think I use like 400 grit sandpaper here, also to remove some of the existing PVC pipe markings. As you can see, the blue wordings. And after a round of spray paint, it should look like this as well. I used the same material, I mean the same color as the black. Didn't really do a good job, as you can see it pooling here and there, but you can choose whatever color you like. Historically, I think it's silver if you look at the reference materials, but altogether I'm pretty satisfied with how it came out. And if definitely, if you can do your spray paint in a very controlled environment like a closed room, do so, because a lot of particles do fly around in the air where I live, and definitely you get some blemishes like so. Once again, after letting your sleeve dry for around like 2 days, I let it rest for a total of like 2 to 3 days. I can't really remember. Now we need to get the red accents onto the blade. As you can see here, I use the jelly roll gel pen that I use, preferably something that rubs off easily. You don't want something that's very permanent. As you can see here, with the power of a protractor and a ruler, and through the power of geometric construction, I actually kind of like eyeball the red lines that would appear on the blade. Um, it kind of varies if you look at the source material for the manga and the anime. Sometimes it has like 6 or 7 spikes, or sometimes even 9, as I counted. But generally, what I would recommend is kind of find your own measurements. Like for me, I think I used 60, 70, and 80-degree angles, as well as differences of, I think, 20 and 30 centimeters. I actually don't really remember, but experiment. One thing that is for sure, though, you want the lines to be decreasing in the angle. I think all the way it went from like, I think 80 all the way down to 40 towards the end, as you can see here. And once you have that, that is basically the shape that the red spikes will take at the bottom of the blade. Moving on, I grabbed myself some painter's tape, yet another thing that I forgot to include at the very beginning of this video, and you generally want to use some like old newspaper or magazine pages to line the top of the places where you don't want it to be painted red. Try to go, again, with light coats. The red, I would say, is kind of easier to use than the black. I don't know, maybe it's just because my technique got better, but generally the same principle of multiple and light coats. Yeah, it kind of looks jank at the very beginning, as you can see here, but trust me, give it some time and give it more coats. When it dries, it will look significantly better. Don't really go too heavy. I kind of did go too heavy on some portions here, but yeah, you learn with experience. And eventually, once everything dries, you will get a very nice glossy red as well. I have seen people make the, what do you call that, MAKA'S scythe in a matte color, but I kind of like the shiny metallic look of it. And here we have the final product. As you can see, the bottom of the section of the blade, at times it's actually a little bit difficult to spray paint, so you actually might want to do a little bit of manual lifting. But overall, I think it turned out quite amazing, given it's my first time making a prop. And now to recap, this is the whole assembly of the scythe. As you can see here, this is the stopper that will sit at the most bottom part of the scythe blade. This will be fixed with the epoxy resin that we got earlier. It should sit all the way near the bottom. I used a rubber band really to mark the position of it later down the line, and then goes with our sleeve, which then slides over the shaft and sits above the stopper. The stopper is what's going to be holding it in place, like so. And finally, we have the top cap. The top cap is what prevents the sleeve from sliding out through the top. So as you can see, there's one at the top and one at the bottom securing it in place. Returning to our white gel pen so it's visible on the black paint, we want to mark out where the hole that we want to slice into to fit our scythe blade. As you can see here, I think I gave a margin of like 7 centimeters on each side. And moving back out outside, I grab a adjustable wrench and a brick, as you'll see that we're going to need this to weight down the wrench to hold it in place while we use the Dremel to cut into it. We're no longer using the metal saw attachment. We're actually using sort of a, I don't even know what this is. It's like a compound disc, but definitely it's meant to be cut into PVC pipes, as you can see right here. And I kind of didn't film this part because I'm not gonna lie, this took way too long and I was getting lazy at this point. But generally, you want to cut as straight of a line as you can through the middle of the pipe, which will then be used to attach the side blade. I widened it a little bit. You kind of have to like do a little bit of a friction fit. You don't want it to be too wide or too narrow, because yeah, you just really want to friction fit it in there. And friction fit is going to be a big part of this connection, as you can see. Just slide it in as so. It should click into place if you do it right. I recommend taking your time and making multiple cuts and multiple adjustments and making sure it's not too wide. And once you're done, the cross section should look pretty neat. The inside of the blade should be contacting the inside of the sleeve as such. Now that we're reaching the final stages of the project, now we get to epoxy resining everything together. I kind of forgot to film the epoxy resin mixing stage, but essentially you want to follow your package directions. For mine, it was a 1-to-1 mixture. So you mix the epoxy resin and its hardener in a 1-to-1 ratio, and you just keep stirring it until it gets homogeneous. And for me, I used a small brush, although you could really be using anything from like a stick or chopsticks if you really wanted to. You just really need to like kind of apply it. For me, I went with this brush because it gets into the nook and crannies of the sleeve, as you can see here. I really make sure to get it on every surface that would be contacting each other. You generally don't want to like rely on the holding power of the epoxy resin early on. It almost like holds very weakly. It takes like almost 2.5 days for it to really gain its full holding power. So definitely like don't count on the glue to hold it together. Like rest it on something or have it in a position where everything is like touching in a very neutral position.
So crazy how we get down. Never thought it would be like this. So crazy how we get down. Place to place, start for some action. So crazy how we get down. You and me, we got it going on. So crazy how we get down. Anything you need, you got it right here.
Creating chemistry, making symmetry. Somehow we nail down more. I get so intrigued. World is strange, times is so deranged. Like standing on the plat and jumping on the fast tree. But we manage your date, the sun shining next day. Understanding the pain while we never fade. It's stuck in the hole, never freaking vacate. Running away, not an option. While we're so.
So crazy how we get down. Never thought it would be like this. So crazy how we get down. Place to place, start for some action. So crazy how we get down. You and me, we got it going on. So crazy how we get down. Anything you need, you got it right.
Coming back to the shaft of the scythe, now that the sleeve and blade is done, using our wrench technique again, we bring it outside, draw a line where we want to cut into using a black marker. As you can see here, the stopper is epoxy resin onto the shaft, and we cut into it like so. Once again, we're really relying on a friction fit here. In fact, my entire scythe is friction fitted from the two parts. You can add epoxy resin if you really wanted to. Make sure you cut into both sides and not just one like I did here. I forgot to show the other part, but eventually the finished product should look like this. And for my first prop build, I think it turned out pretty well. Definitely not perfect, and definitely learned a lot that I would implement in my next build should I do it again. And for the shaft, you can definitely paint it the silver color that it is intended to be. However, by the time I made this project, the Comic Fest that Toto was going to was getting a little bit close, so I think this is what had to be done with. As well as I was about to mention, the top part does have the part where it fits Soul's eye. I might do a modification in the future using, I think what it is, EVA foam, right? EVA foam. Let me know if you guys definitely want to see that in the future. And now let's go to the cost breakdown. So starting off our parts list, we have the main piece, which is the MDF board valued at 25 ringgit, followed by the PVC pipes at end caps, which I will be assigning a value of 18, which I kind of forgot how much I bought it for. Spray paint, I know they were like 10 each, so that's 20. The 3-ton epoxy resin was at 35, if I'm not mistaken. I might be just coming up with numbers here. The Dremel definitely did cost me 120. The wall putty is at 7, but let's make it an 8 since I, labor tax. Sandpaper of various grits were at 10, and finally the white gel pen at 3 ringgit. And that brings our grand total to 240 Malaysian ringgit, roughly estimating to be around 61 US dollars. Not too expensive if you ask me. A majority of the cost did come from the Dremel. However, if your site is made by the greatest engineer that's ever lived, aka me, here would be the additional costs. And before I end the video, I'd like to give a special thanks to all my supporters and subscribers who have been following the channel so far. This video was actually meant to be a 1,000 subscriber special. It still is, it's just that that boat has long sailed, and we're currently at 8,100 subscribers. I am very grateful for those who have made it along the way, and definitely it's a great time to announce that I have started a Ko-Fi. It is a platform that allows you guys to support me, whether it be through a one-time supportive donation or a monthly subscription. However much is welcomed. And for my local supporters, I also do have a local QR that you can use to contribute to the channel. That would be very much appreciated. It helps fund all my video series, especially my Shizu Eats series, which seems to be popping off recently. Definitely help me eat some more meals. Links will be down in the description, and definitely every contribution will help towards Todo's ever-growing depth to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next video.
So ladies and gentlemen, let's